Hi, I'm John, just getting into my 20s. Like every summer, I went to my summer house in the resort area. We were hanging out with girls, going to bars, and having fun with my friends every night. After another night like this, I headed home around 4 a.m. I had been drinking a lot, but I hadn't lost myself. The distance between the bars on the beach and our house was a 15-minute walk. I wasn't using a vehicle like a car or motorcycle because I was drinking alcohol. As I walked towards the house, I had to pass by the old cemetery dating back to the 1800s, but I'm not the type of person who's afraid of graves or dead people. I heard a crying sound near the cemetery. Naturally, I was curious. When I got closer, I saw a girl in her 20s like me, sitting on the ground, sobbing, leaning against the wall of the cemetery. I asked her if she needed anything. She just looked at me with crying eyes and didn't answer. I was very sad to see her in that state. She was a very pretty girl with blonde hair and her blue eyes were bloodshot from crying. I said, "Would you like me to help?" "I'll do my best." She just nodded her head in the affirmative without saying anything. I took her hand and helped her to her feet. Her hands were ice cold, even though the temperature at night in the resort area where we were was around 22 to 23 degrees Celsius. I told her that our house was nearby and that we needed to wash our hands and that I could offer her something to eat if she was hungry. Again, she just looked into my eyes and nodded her head in the affirmative. My mom and dad had gone out of town for a few days. So, there was no one at home. But I swear, I didn't have any intention of taking advantage of the girl. I was just very sad to see her and a little curious about her story. I wanted to help. Finally, we arrived home. I opened the door and went in. She was just standing there at the door jamb. When I said, "Why don't you come in?" she followed me inside. I immediately gave her a blanket and sat her down on the couch. After a while, I showed her the location of the sink and told her to wash her hands and that I would make her some tea. As instructed, she went to the sink and washed her hands. She now looked calmer. I asked her why she didn't speak at all. She looked into my eyes again, but she didn't say anything. I suspected that she might be mute, so I didn't press her and didn't ask anything. I offered her tea, but she didn't take a sip. It was getting late. I told her that she could lie down if she wanted. I opened the couch and gave her a pillow and put her to bed. I went to my room and fell asleep immediately, also under the influence of alcohol. When I woke up in the morning, there was no one on the couch. She had folded up the blanket and left without saying a word. I was really sad. After all, I had helped her, and a person could at least leave a note. In the evening, we met up with our friends again and drank a lot again, but I was really hooked on that girl. I couldn't even look at any other girl and couldn't have fun because I was thinking about her. Around 3 a.m., I left my friends and headed home. When I passed by the cemetery, I saw the girl again in the same place, crying. I went up to her and sat down on the ground next to her and said, "You left without saying a word in the morning." I was curious. Doesn't a person leave without saying a word to someone who helped them? She kept crying, looking into my eyes. I tried to calm her down by patting her back. Her back was ice cold. I took her hand again and invited her to my house. But this time, she grabbed my hand and practically dragged me away. My God, she was quite strong for a girl. She took me all the way into the cemetery. She brought me to the head of a grave ahead. The gravestone said Michelle Jameson, born 1780, died 1809. She started crying again, pointing to the gravestone. I thought it was her mother's grave, but the date on the gravestone was a young age to be a mother. She pointed to the grave and then to herself. At first, according to what is told about her, Michelle hanged herself after being raped by her boyfriend's brother. And she wished to be burned, not buried. She wanted her ashes to be thrown into the sea. But the Catholic family ignored her will and buried her here after holding a ceremony in the church. Every year, in the months she died, she appears around the cemetery at night and asks people who approach her to take her body out of the grave. It happened to me this year too. The next day, after drinking again at night, Michelle was sitting next to the cemetery wall crying. This time, I went home without stopping by her. It continued like this for a few more nights. She had disappeared by now, but this time she was saying in my dreams, "Get me out of that grave." I didn't know how to get rid of it. It continued like this for about a year. Then I visited the cemetery in the summer. I was going to leave flowers on the grave, but the grave was opened and empty. I asked the guard what was going on. One night, someone he convinced managed to get Michelle's body out of the grave. They found bone fragments burned on the beach. I haven't heard anything about Michelle since that day. I think she has finally found peace.